Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as everyone in this House knows, House Bill 1437 contains the General Appropriations Bill for the fiscal year 2013-14. This budget represents a reasonable and sustainable budget that is not predicated on the passage of any other major proposals. Earlier this week, we considered amendments and in a bipartisan fashion considered reasonable amendments that make sense for Pennsylvania residents. In total, this budget spends $28.3 billion. $28.3 billion, which is a $578 million increase over last year's general spending budget.
Gentlemen, suspend for just a second. Appreciate the members that hold the conversations down. If necessary, take them to the rear of the House. Just hold them down just a little bit loud here. I appreciate a little more attention. And like I say, if necessary, take them to the rear of the House. Apologize, the gentleman. Mr. Adolph may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll repeat those last facts. This budget spends $28.3 billion, which is approximately $578 million over last year, or a 2.1% increase, right around the cost of living, the same that our small business people and our families are having to work with. Ladies and gentlemen, education is clearly the top priority in this budget. In total, this budget spends $11.6 billion on basic and higher education. Combined, they represent 41% of our total state budget. Education receives the most money out of all the categories of spending in state government. That is a fact, a real fact. A closer look at the proposed education spending in House Bill 1437 shows that K-12 education receives an all-time $10 billion spending, an all-time record of spending for basic education in Pennsylvania. That's a fact. Those trying to put a spin on those facts are merely playing a game of smoke and mirrors. I know every teacher and every resident of Pennsylvania knows that the retirement benefits are a real fact, and that these funds that we put into this budget are under current law. And I believe those dedicated teachers appreciate that. Moreover, the funding formula used to distribute basic education funding dollars takes into consideration demographic issues and apply an aid ratio to make sure underprivileged districts receive additional support from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. When you look at the disadvantaged districts, you will see that a much greater share of their funding comes from the state of Pennsylvania as compared to their local effort. This budget reaffirms its commitment to K-12 education by proposing a $100 million increase for basic education funding and provides school districts with an additional $160 million for school employee and teacher pension contributions. The proposal also invests in early childhood education by adding $6 million for Head Start and pre-K counts programs. House Bill 1437 increases funding for the Library Access Program by $500,000 or 18%. This proposal includes $3 million for grants to career and technical schools to purchase new equipment so the Commonwealth can expand career and technical educational opportunities. 1437 also includes funding for mobile science centers, which was not in the governor's budget. Overall, Overall, there is a proposed $274 million increase for education, which brings the total state appropriation to $10 billion for basic education. Once again, this represents the most state dollars for basic education ever. In other areas of the budget, there's an 11% increase for the Commission on Crime and Delinquency and a 106% increase for the violence prevention programs. We've increased the Attorney General's office as recommended to receive a 1.5% increase. But we also expand public safety programs, the likes of the local drug task force and the child predator interception units. The budget proposal recommends the governor's proposal of an additional $50 million for senior services. In an effort to ensure government accountability and efficient use of tax dollars, the proposal recommends an additional $2.6 million for the Auditor General's office. In agriculture, our leading industry in Pennsylvania, $4 million to restore funding for ag research, hardwood floors research, ag educational and promotion programs, food marketing programs, and the Pennsylvania Preferred Program has also been increased. $4 million for the conservation districts has been restored. $1 million in the ag department and close to $3 million in DEP. This proposal recommends that state fairs and the state farm show receive both $3 million in state tax dollars. The budget also recommends that funding for the vet lab and the animal commission are moved to the Racehorse Development Fund, which will actually provide a net increase to all ag programs. To better serve the taxpayers of Pennsylvania and ensure that access to state government records, the budget proposes an 18.7% increase for the Office of Open Records. In DCNR appropriation, $2 million have been added for the heritage parks so that we can continue to lead community conservation and revitalization in our efforts. Within corrections, there are new funds for the Justice Reinvestment Fund to help further reduce correction spending and generate savings to reinvest in strategies and programs to increase public safety. In the newly formed drug and alcohol program, there's a 1.5% increase for those programs. A 4% increase in DEP's budget for both environmental program management and environmental protection operations. In our health department lines, you, the legislators, have heard from your constituents. And once again, we added $7.2 million to restore the funding for health and disease-related items like diabetes, epilepsy, ALS, Tourette's syndrome, biotechnology research, poison control, and lupus support. And just the other day, we added another $60,000 with an agreed-to bipartisan effort for sickle cell. In the insurance department, there's a $9.5 million increase to the CHIP appropriation to help ensure all Pennsylvania children who are eligible for CHIP are enrolled in a health insurance program. In the labor and industry area, $250,000 for a new pilot program that has the State Workforce Investment Board implement programs to help our veterans, to help them get the additional education and job placement skills that are needed. $500,000 has been restored for the new choices and new options in this budget. Now, speaking of vets, there's also a 43% increase in funds for the Veterans Outreach Appropriation under the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs. And thanks to the increase of federal funds for Pennsylvania veterans' homes, we can serve even more Pennsylvania veterans in our homes. The Department of Public Welfare budget reorganizes medical assistance dollars to move the statewide managed care to achieve better health outcomes in a most effective manner. The department budget also contains an additional $20 million to further reduce the waiting list for individuals with individual disabilities. This is the second year in a row that we've added additional money for those on the waiting list. This proposal also recommends an additional 10% for domestic violence and rape crisis centers. In all, DPW will receive a total of $10.9 billion. $10.9 billion. Public safety. To ensure public safety, there's an additional $12.7 million for an additional 300 state troopers. PEMA. This proposal calls for a 3% increase for the State Fire Commissioner's Office. Probation and parole, an 8.7% increase is provided to ensure better supervision of those offenders. We've also added an increase of 1.5% for all Pennsylvania courts. That same 1.5% has been increased for the state legislature. In total, the total spending, once again, $28.3 billion, a 2.1% increase over last year. To sum this up, ladies and gentlemen, this House budget proposal outlines priorities related to education, health and human services, environmental protection, public safety, job creation, and government transparency. We are recommending a $100 million increase for basic education, supporting the governor's priority to put 300 new state troopers on the streets, restoring funding for our county conservation districts, and increasing funding for the Office of Open Records. Given all the feedback that I've heard from legislators and constituents from all over the Commonwealth, I know this is a responsible budget that all of the members of this chamber can support. Thank you for your cooperation, and Chairman Markozik, I want to thank you for your cooperation, your staff, as well as the great staff that I have here in Harrisburg for putting together what I consider a very responsible budget, and I ask for all for a yes vote on House Bill 1437. Thank you very much.
Question is